나는 그저 서 있을 뿐이었어.
I am NetMoverSitan. Welcome to the Prologue section of the Limbus Company Law series. Now, this will likely be shorter than what will follow, but I will cover it nevertheless. Where to begin with this? Oh yes, the Selva Oscura, the Twilight Forest. In the Divine Comedy, written by Dante Alighieri, this is a metaphor for those that are on an unfamiliar path or losing one's way. Now, this doesn't have to be literal, as this dark wood, in the context of that work, is a representation of sin, and he was attacked by beasts, a lion, a leopard, and a she-wolf. The lion representing violence, the leopard representing fraud, and the she-wolf representing incontinence, or, to put it in a simpler term, intemperate desire. The she-wolf is also a key part of the founding myth of Rome. Now, other than that last part, this is actually quite relevant to the story, as the story starts with Dante, as they were attacked by three individuals called Wolf, Leopard, and Lion. Dante was trying to run away from them in a dark forest, annoyed that they were interrupted, as they were trying to engrave the aspect, whatever that is. Lion mentions that their master wasn't planning on breaking one of the city's taboos. This was just something that none dared to even consider. Now, there are two kinds of taboos. One that applies to a specific district, such as recording of video footage in District 14. Yeah, N-Corp sends taboo hunters to deal with violators of that one. Sometimes they bring them intact, other times they just take the head. Now, as for taboos that apply anywhere in the city, damaging of a residential district is one example. Yeah, Moses didn't dare to do that, even if it was the night in the backstreets at the time, because that's enough for a price to be put on a head, if that was to happen. And speaking of head, Panther mentioned that Dante had a different one, implying that the original head was decapitated and replaced by a cybernetic replacement. Much like Nemo of the Kane office. Then Panther asked if they came prepared. Now, at this point, Dante threatened him with the prospect that there'll be no match for them once they have the aspects. Sadly, all they could do was communicate with clock noises, as that head did not come with some kind of vocal processor, making Lion laugh as a result of this. Wolf could only hear ticking as well, although when they stabbed them, it was obvious to them that Dante could feel pain. Dante was unaware of why they were being attacked, but it wasn't good, as the memories were dissolving, as what they did was done far too quickly. Then at this point, they were incapacitated. This disappointed Wolf, wanting to get it over with. Lion was in no hurry, as where they were was a place that none visited, and Dante was one that none could see. Then Wolf told him that they mustn't drag it on any longer, as that's her teachings, as in their master. Yes, they're following someone else. Lion disagreed, at that statement, as this is a moment of a lifetime to kill someone of this caliber. There wouldn't be another chance to do that. Panther saw this as too sentimental of Lion, hoping from some discretion from him, much to Lion's annoyance. Panther wanted to look at their true face and then wanted to know where their star was. But this was pointless, as Dante was unable to speak in a way that they could understand, basically telling them, "You, just kill me already, I ain't telling you where it is," although they struggled to remember where it was. So they couldn't tell that trio even if they wanted to, their memories eluding them. Regardless, without a vocal processor, that message was about as understandable as R2-D2's bleeps to any that don't have an electronic interface or a nearby protocol droid. Something that Panther realized. Then Wolf wanted to finish them. But that wasn't to be, as they had something else to be concerned about. Specifically, a noise that was approaching them. Lion asked Panther if he was tracked. He dismissed that idea, believing it to be a wild animal. Wolf dismissed that, as this noise wasn't one that a beast would make. The source of it was approaching them. The headlight revealed its presence as a bus. Lion believing it to have taken a wrong turn, intending to stand in front of it and cripple it with his strength, only to be knocked back as he was rammed into. Then a woman showing a look of an intelligent person spoke of reaching a harbour of glory. Dante read that her nameplate read Faust. Apparently Dante had lost their way in the forest, according to her. Yet they were not overcome by fear. Both were unsure why. Something about lifting their head and finding a star. And then Faust told Dante to repeat what she tells them, as they reminded themselves of that image. To follow their star. Then they felt a thump in their head, followed by the sting of several chains penetrating their chest. 12 of them, to be more precise, as they struck 12 individuals, including Faust. But thankfully they aren't like the chains with hooks on them like Pinhead used. As if that was the case, they'd be boned. Instead, they phased into them like cracked rifts, as if glass was shattered when they were struck. Faust tried to reassure them that their heart was still working, even if it didn't feel so. The pact was sealed. They were all bound to their time. The beating of their hearts now depended on where their hand fell, hoping that they'd make a fine leader. Dante was confused by what she meant by that. Then Ishmael questioned if that was really everything. Yisang saw that a single apple had fallen, or roughly translated, it had started. Rodion was bored and wanted some action. Gregor wanted a warm-up. Altis saw Dante as a wretched... a wretch miserably writhing on the ground. Yes. And Gregor cautioned her as, that's their new boss. Yeah, not the best of starts, is it? Faust understood that the attack happened in an instant. She was impressed that they managed to hide their head. Dante wanted to know who rescued them from certain death. Apparently, according to Faust, they're bearers of justice that had come to aid them, and that in front of them was a magical bus that took them where they wanted to go. That just added to Dante's confusion. Clearly, Faust was taking the mostly. But they were saviors. Then she basically told them that they had not a lot of time as they're having to deal with 3 armed, powerful, and annoyed combatants. So she gave her explanation, which sums up to the 12 strangers there will fight for them. That much was confirmed by Faust. So Dante decided to kill those arrogant vandals and then go back to where they were, wherever that was. They were frightened by them, forgetting something important. Apparently, this was a side effect of their current head, according to Faust, who told them to focus on the more immediate problem of the trio that tried to kill them. Then Ursus asked how she should redress them. Commander Clock telling them that they await their orders, although Gregor questioned the need, as he saw that going one-on-one was the only way. Ishmael was too slow to react as Heathcliff charged at the enemy with the intent to smash their skulls in. This resulted in their first battle, which ended in disaster, as the damned dozen were dysfunctional and uncoordinated, meaning that it was a one-sided battle against their enemy, who easily took them down. Panther thought that this was a joke, not getting how Lion could struggle against them. Well, that's hardly conclusive, as Lion was hit by a bus, not by them. Gregor wanted to talk it over, then he was stabbed by a cruel-looking sword. Yi Sang was killed, yet he maintained his composure. Ishmael thought it was a ridiculous idea to fight them in their current state, and then she was killed. Rodian said that she didn't even... and then she was killed before she could finish her sentence. Dante was annoyed by this, as they were told that they would fight for them. But Faust didn't promise that they'd actually win. Just before she was impaled, she hinted at following a star to solve this. Commander Clock, more like Commander... Their first battle went about as well as a reception of a racist comedy in a location with a woke government. Then Panther remarked about this suicidal performance, while Dante was unsure of what to do now. It seemed that they were only postponing the inevitable. Then Virgilius, the Red Gaze, emerged from the bus, and told Lion to tell the serpent that this flow cannot be stopped, who proceeded to dismember Lion and Wolf with his Stigma worktop tech augmented Gladius. Then he asked Panther why he only dismembered the other two. Well, one of them needed to be able to carry the others out of there. And Panther knew better than to fight a colour fixer, a prospect even more suicidal than those that he assisted in killing. Virgilius saw it as nothing compared to what he just did. that his boss would recognize his part and that his wounds were a Medal of Honor. Are you sure you're not confusing him for one of the Blade lineage, Virgilius? He then asked if he wanted this moment to be the end of his life. And Leopard wisely chose to leave before Virgilius reconsidered his offer. Dante was unsure of who he was with. Yes, who Virgilius was with. But Virgilius told Dante that they needed a little time to rewind. Then they were overcome by a sharp pain in their chest, as if they had a xenomorph about to burst out. This pain affected their ribs, intestines, stomach, and lungs. The agony was overwhelming. The rapid ticking was him screaming due to the unbearable pain. Sounds like me whenever I hear ABBA. They were barely able to stay conscious, but they saw that time was being inverted for the damned dozen, as their deaths were being undone. Virgilius made it clear that they'll suffer plenty from now on. Yeah, he's not going to sugarcoat it as... well, it'll make no difference since now they're heading down Creek past Ola Town and heading off a waterfall of sewage and heading towards Diarrheaville, the capital city of the state of your well and truly. Sometime after, they were woken up by the howl of a wailing beast with ceaseless cries, possibly out of hunger. They awoke to find themselves in a bus. Charon introducing herself as the bus driver. Now we know that she used to be Lapis, the daughter of a syndicate boss turned orphan and then an experimental test subject that became a different person after it, rather than a distortion. But the others don't know that. Well, except for Virgilius, of course. Charon greeting them with good morning, then Virgilius corrected her, telling her that it isn't morning, then asked Dante how they were feeling, which was made difficult by the language barrier, as Virgilius didn't understand ticking. He introduced himself and asked for some kind of reaction from Dante. Dante nodded to indicate their understanding. Satisfied with this, he told Charon to ride, whom complied. Then Virgilius asked Dante if they remembered who they were. Dante shook their head to indicate no. Although it was clear to Virgilius that they wanted their memory back, and Dante confirmed this. Virgilius asked what's to stop the others from adopting gesture-based communication. Yeah, I can see a flaw in that. So, if Dante wanted to express their frustration, they could just give you the finger, if they were sure that they could get away with it. Thankfully, Faust saw that as unnecessary, as they wouldn't have that much freedom over their bodies most of the time. Dante didn't even recognize their name when she spoke this, and then Faust made it clear that she could understand Dante, which would make communication with her and the rest of the damned dozen much quicker. Remarking that outdated ideas of communication must be one of the side effects of the head replacement, thinking that it's anachronistic to think that vocal cords in a tongue are necessary to talk. Actually, no, it's because of the uncertainty of how you're able to understand them, as they don't have a vocal processor. Faust then made it clear that the only ones that could understand them are the sinners, or the damned dozen, as I call them. Well, I think it more accurately describes them. That and Dirty Dozen is taken. The others were excited, but Virgilius made sure that they briefly introduced themselves one at a time. Gregor was the closest one, and was sick of taking any sort of lead. He struggled to come up with the words for sentences for his new manager. Not sure what they did with the previous head that was attached to their body previously, but he decided not to ask any further about that. Rodion saw Dante as the person who will make them filthy rich, believing that there's a good reason that they became their manager, possibly because they were a big deal in a nest, and that when their old habits come back, the money will be pouring in. Dante noted her sociability. Sinclair was nervous around Dante, speaking briefly, making it clear that he's inexperienced. Yi Sang was another one with few words, although his were more cryptic. Ishmael was annoyed with the lack of proper introductions, doing hers properly, looking forward to working with Dante after they've stopped them from staying dead. Heathcliff was about as blunt as his weapon, not one for fitting in, calling himself a professional wrecker of property and people alike. Although his next sentence contradicted that, as he did that to those that him off, where they'll be fine as long as they don't try and boss him around. Yeah, it's best to point him in the general direction of the enemy and just let him take it out on them. Then Don Quixote gleefully introduced herself in a pseudo-Shakespearean tongue as a fixer sprinting for the dream, side by side. Dante then recalled that fixer was a term that they used to know without knowing exactly why. Don Quixote mentioned them as protectors of the city. Before she could go over the city, Virgilius stopped her as he made it clear that they should give brief introductions. Then Hong Lu introduced himself, hoping that they'd get along well. He likes the head, asking if it's a popular model. Dante said that it wasn't that kind of... Then Hong Lu said that it wasn't his interest. This annoyed Heathcliff, but just before he was about to get violent, he was discouraged from doing this when Virgilius looks at him as if to say, "Try it, and you'll regret it, punk." Ryosho was another to briefly introduce herself, saying that it was nice to meet them. Miosot was also brief, although he was more polite than Ryosho. Ortis was awkward, but just as Dante was about to bow, Ortis stopped them and apologized for her rudeness earlier, complimenting their generosity. Yeah, she's the kind of person that sucks up to the boss. She apparently knew that they had what it took to lead them. Most humans causing noise and friction as a result of confrontation. Some reap mutual benefit from coming head to head, like a blade to a whetstone. Yeah. Ishmael called her out on her, hypocrisy. Yeah, bold-faced high praise after calling them a miserably writhing wretch. Then we have Faust, describing herself in the third person as a genius that they'd be lucky to cross paths with even once in their life. She explained to the confused Dante that she has a brilliant mind, then spoke of that expression that if a tree makes sound if no one is there to hear it. Well, yeah, sorry I butchered that one, but it's not really important. Then Virgilius stopped her as she's introducing herself. Then he explained Dante's new occupation as manager to them, with Faust acting as interpreter, translating Dante's side of the conversation, where executive manager Dante will embark on a trip to the Inferno with the 12 sinners. Yeah. You're all going to... Wait, aren't they already in a place where hell isn't much worse? Regardless, Dante asked why they should go there. Apparently, treasure awaits them at the end of the road, at least according to Virgilius. Dante asking if they used to be a treasure hunter. Virgilius didn't ask for their understanding, nor was it a question of their willingness. Well, their former is important if they're to do their job effectively. Regardless, they'll have to listen to him if they want to reclaim their memories and original head. This made Dante hesitant. This concerned Virgilius, as this was the scenario that they didn't anticipate, one where Dante refused to cooperate. Faust disagreed. She explained that once their missions were complete, they'll be able to engrave the aspects. This resonated with Dante, and they agreed to help them. Then Virgilius noticed that the bus wasn't moving. Charon pointed out the rats, those that are barely a syndicate outside, as she only snoozes at rest stops. This annoyed the Red Gaze, as she should inform them if anything happens with the bus. Mephi being what Charon refers to the bus being called Mephistopheles, which is also the engine that runs it, both made by Faust. Dante then looked outside, ignoring Virgilius's question about the bus, and saw these... Virgilius saw these rats as good practice for their command, although Faust noted that the strategy needed to be refined to minimize them being slaughtered, as guess who has to rewind time to make them alive? Dante! That's who! This concerned Dante, as they were brought back because Dante turned back the clock. Virgilius stopped the explanation and told the sinners to go off the bus to deal with the rats. Faust then elaborated about combats, about how to do so effectively. And after more successfully directing the battle and the rats were killed, and the damned dozen were still alive, Virgilius considered them to be more useful than before. However, Dante noted that one got away, asking if they should go after them. Apparently they were heading in that direction anyway. Charon was excited by this, and after finishing off the remaining rats, Ishmael was annoyed that this wasn't what she signed up for, as she joined Limbus Company to advance her career without slowing down, where at present the violence was meaningless, like they're no better than the rats they killed. Don Quixote objected to this as she saw them as evildoers who attacked them. Ishmael was annoyed by this, telling the overzealous blonde girl with the lance to basically shut the up. Ishmael considered changing jobs if they're going to beat people under orders, like hired thugs. Faust pointed out that resignation wasn't permitted. It was in their contracts. Ishmael argued that any contract based on lies is basically null and void. Although Faust didn't consider the combat to be meaningless, as apparently when the bus ingested fuel, it yields a byproduct, which could be used by them to grow more powerful. Yi Sang knows this well, due to him being the creator of the mirror technology. So he basically agreed with her, although asking if the reflection is your own or another being entirely, that's a different matter, as, well, at that point they used the mirror technology to draw out an alternate identity, a version of Ishmael that had taken a different path. This was much to her, well, much for her to take in. Faust stating that as the bus goes onwards, she'd naturally... And then Virgilius interrupted her by saying that she'll take on more important tasks than beating up random criminals. Basically, they shouldn't fight stronger opponents early on. That will come later. However, there are some side effects with the mirror technology, as it works by whisking out a possibility. It overwrites a part of their memories, and this concerns Rodia, as it sounded dangerous, worrying that she'll no longer be herself by the end of this. Faust reassuring her that although they'll borrow the identities and memories of these alternates, the system was designed to ensure that they didn't lose control of their own existence. Yi Sang hinting that it largely faded away once the identity wasn't in use. As for how their capability grows, that's up to Dante. Urtis seeing it as a transformation, Faust agreeing with her, Rodia asking where she picked up some big words from. Urtis had clearly been around. As for Gregor, he said, Verwandlung. Yeah, sorry if I butchered the pronunciation, which meant transformation in German. Virgilius then basically told them, talk later, fight the rats. After that fight, Charon informed them that the road was clear, but she complained that Mephi could have just run them over just fine. That made Dante ask, why did they fight then? And it was clear to Virgilius that the ticking sound meant that they were annoyed. So Virgilius didn't need to know what they were saying, so he basically assured them that it wasn't pointless, as they needed to work on managing their staff, while his role as the guide was deciding where they'd go and how they'd arrive there, telling them not to argue with him. Dante asked how they were supposed to question a stranger who can't even hear them. Faust told him that nothing much was said, so Virgilius said that it was a verbose agreement. Charon was ready to make Mephi go. She was excited about this. Dante asked where they were going. Virgilius said that they already told than this. Dante was of course asking where specifically they were going, as in their next destination. Well, that'll have to wait until chapter 1. I'll talk about the more specific parts of this at the end of these videos. Let's talk about Lion, Panther, and Wolf, where they mentioned that they were following her teachings. And Virgilius mentioned the serpent. Now, considering that they're animal-themed and have purple strips on them around their attire, and that the emblem of a certain colour fixer involves a purple snake eating its own tail, it's safe to say that the one that is their master is Iori, the Purple Tear. It looks like she's using others to do her dirty work again. Yeah, Argalia really did learn from the best when it comes to that. And she was the one that set the red gaze on the path that he's still walking on, even if he didn't see what was in front of him coming, such as the destruction of the orphanage. As for what the trio of these that are following the Purple Tear were able to do, it looked disturbingly similar, if not identical, to what Virgilius was able to do against that docent in the corridor. That emotion-fueled augmentation that gave him the strength to kick that docent into the abyss. So that's the power of sin. Either he learned that from Iori, or they each learned it independently of each other. And Iori taught those three how to do that. As for Dante having their head removed and replaced with a cybernetic one, what was the reason why they had a head without a vocal processor? Is it so that they're unable to tell anyone but the damned dozen anything? Or is it a part of the design that allows for selective time inversion, possibly by utilizing T-Corp singularity in some way? If it's not an ability that this distortion, assuming that this is a distortion, was capable of. As for the aspects that they wanted to engrave, there's still some questions as to what that is. Clearly something that Dante was driven to do. Something that the trio wasn't willing to allow them to complete. They also recognized the term fixer, which is a possible hint to, well, who they used to be, if they are who I suspect them to be.
나는 그저 서 있을 뿐이었어.
Yes or no? It sounds comedic for a grimdark setting, isn't it? It will get darker, I assure you. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!